Rain hammered the cracked pavement of Southside Chicago like bullets, each drop a reminder that some nights were made for hiding, not helping. But Renee Holloway had never been good at looking away. The man lay crumpled against the brick wall of the closed bodega, blood mixing with rainwater, creating pink rivers that disappeared into the gutter. His expensive suit was torn, his face half hidden by shadows and swelling. Most people would have crossed the street. Most people would have called 911 and kept walking. Renee wasn't most people. "Sir," her voice cut through the storm as she knelt beside him, her worn nurse's scrubs already soaked. "Sir, can you hear me?" Dark eyes opened, sharp, calculating, dangerous even through the pain. A predator's eyes. But beneath that, something else flickered. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition of kindness he'd forgotten existed. She didn't know she'd just saved the most dangerous man in Chicago. She didn't know he'd spend the rest of his life protecting her for it. Subscribe to see how one act of compassion changes two broken lives forever. 20 minutes earlier, Renee had clocked out of her third shift at Northwestern Memorial, her feet screaming in her sneakers, her back aching from 12 hours of lifting patients twice her size. The bus ride home would take 40 minutes. Walking would take an hour, but save $4. $4 meant milk for Amelie's cereal tomorrow morning. She walked. The rain started on Ashland Avenue, turning her short natural coils into tight springs against her scalp. She ducked under awnings when she could, but Chicago rain didn't ask permission. It took what it wanted, like everything else in this city. Her phone buzzed. A text from her neighbor, Mrs. Kaminsky. "Amelie asleep. No rush. Stay dry." Renee smiled despite the downpour. Mrs. Kaminsky never charged for watching her daughter. No matter how many times Renee tried to pay. "We take care of each other," the elderly Polish woman always said. "That's what neighbors do." If only the world worked that way. She was thinking about Amelie's upcoming 7th birthday, how she'd save enough for that art set her daughter wanted when she saw him. At first, just a dark shape against darker brick. Then the blood registered, the shallow breathing, the way his hand pressed against his ribs like he was trying to hold himself together. Renee's nurse instincts kicked in before common sense could intervene. "Sir?" She crouched beside him, assessing. Mid-40s, Asian, Korean maybe. Based on features she'd learned to recognize from the hospital's diverse patient population. Contusions on his face, possible broken ribs, defensive wounds on his knuckles. He'd been in a fight, a bad one. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked, fingers finding his pulse. Strong, steady. This man was a survivor. His eyes opened fully now, focusing on her face. Really seeing her, taking in her rich mahogany skin, her heart-shaped face framed by rain-soaked hair, her honey-brown eyes filled with genuine concern. She watched something shift in his expression, confusion maybe that she was still there, that she hadn't run. "Dongwon," he rasped in a voice like gravel. Accented English, careful pronunciation. "Beck Dongwon." "Mr. Beck, I'm Renee. I'm a nurse. You're hurt. We need to get you help." No hospitals. The command was immediate, absolute. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. No police. Red flags everywhere. Renee knew she should leave, should call someone, should do literally anything except what she was about to do. "Okay," she heard herself say. "No hospitals, but you can't stay here. Can you walk?" He nodded, pride forcing him upright despite obvious pain. Renee slid under his arm, taking his weight, and together they staggered down the street. Her ancient Honda Civic was parked 3 blocks away. She'd moved it twice this month to avoid street cleaning tickets she couldn't afford. "Where?" she asked, as she helped him into the passenger seat, his blood staining her scrubs darker. He gave her an address in Gold Coast, of course. This man's torn suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. The drive took 15 minutes. He didn't speak, but she felt his gaze on her profile, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Renee kept her eyes on the road, on the rain, on anything but the growing awareness that she'd just involved herself in something far beyond an injured man. The building's doorman straightened when he saw Dongwon, shock flashing across his face before professional neutrality returned. "Mr. Beck, shall I call Dr. Lim?" "Yes, and Cassius. Tell him it's handled." Dongwon's voice had changed, harder now, edged with authority that made the doorman jump to obey. Renee should have left then, should have gotten back in her car and driven away. Instead, she followed him inside, rode the elevator to the penthouse, and watched him transform from wounded man to something else entirely. The penthouse was minimalist elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, Korean art on white walls, furniture that cost more than her car. Everything precise, controlled, expensive. "You should go," Dongwon said. But he didn't move toward the door, didn't make her leave. "Your ribs might be broken. You're still bleeding. At least let me clean and assess the wounds before your doctor arrives." Professional, clinical. Ignore the way her pulse jumped when he looked at her. A muscle worked in his jaw. Then, slowly, he nodded. Renee found the kitchen, pristine, barely used, and gathered what she needed. When she returned, Dongwon had removed his jacket and shirt, revealing a body that told stories, lean muscle, old scars and ink, so much ink. A dragon coiled around his torso, a phoenix spread across his shoulders, and there, just visible above his collarbone, the dark edge of a neck tattoo disappearing beneath his skin like a secret. She forced herself to focus on the fresh wounds, cleaned them with steady hands, bandaged what she could, tried to ignore the heat of his skin under her fingers, the way he watched her with those unreadable dark eyes. "Why did you help me?" he asked finally. Renee met his gaze. "Because you needed help. Most people would have kept walking." "I'm not most people." Something flickered in his expression. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of something more dangerous. "No," he agreed softly. "You're not." The doctor arrived then, an efficient Korean man who asked no questions and raised no eyebrows at Renee's presence. She stayed until Dongwon was settled, until she was certain he'd survive the night. At the door, she paused. "Take care of yourself, Mr. Beck." "Dongwon," he corrected. "And Renee?" She turned back. "Thank you, for seeing someone worth saving." She didn't know how to respond to that, so she left. She didn't know he'd already made the decision that would change everything. Their worlds just collided. Stay tuned to see what happens when a mafia boss decides to protect the woman who saved his life. Renee woke to sunlight streaming through her apartment's thin curtains, and the sound of Amelie singing off-key in the bathroom. Morning in their third-floor walk-up in Pilsen, cramped but clean, struggling but surviving. "Mama!" Amelie burst into the bedroom, all long limbs and wild curls, her light brown skin glowing with excitement. "Mrs. Kaminsky made pancakes." "Did she now?" Renee smiled, pulling her daughter in for a hug. Amelie smelled like coconut oil and childhood, the best scent in the world. She said a man brought them, a delivery man with a fancy car. Amelie's dark eyes, so much like her father's, the father who'd left before she was born, sparkled with curiosity. "Who sends pancakes, Mama?" Renee's stomach dropped. In the kitchen, she found enough food for a week. Fresh fruit, premium groceries, the expensive organic milk she could never afford, and a note, written in precise handwriting. "Thank you. D.W." Mrs. Kaminsky said he was very polite, her neighbor reported, appearing in the doorway with her usual impeccable timing. "Very handsome, too. Korean man, tall, expensive suit. Said he owed you a debt." Renee's hands trembled slightly as she folded the note. This was wrong. This was too much. This was... Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Please accept. Small gratitude for large kindness. You saved my life. Let me feed yours. Dongwon." She should have refused. Should have sent it all back. Instead, she watched Amelie bite into a strawberry, a real, fresh strawberry in November, and saw pure joy on her daughter's face. "This is too much," she texted back. The response came immediately. "Not enough. Never enough for what you did." 3 days passed. Renee worked her shifts, came home to Amelie, tried to return to normal, but normal had shifted. The landlord called, her rent was paid, 3 months in advance, anonymous donor. The collection agency stopped calling about the medical bills from Amelie's bout with pneumonia last winter, paid in full. Renee knew who was responsible. She showed up at his building on her day off, furious and frightened, and something else she didn't want to name. The doorman, Cassius, she remembered, called upstairs, then waved her through with a knowing smile. Dongwon answered the door in dark slacks and a white dress shirt, the top 4 buttons undone, sleeves rolled to his forearms revealing the continuation of that dragon tattoo. The bruises on his face had faded to yellow-green, but he moved carefully, ribs still healing. "Renee." Her name sounded different in his accented English. careful, precious. "You need to stop," she said without preamble. "The food, the rent, the bills, it's too much." "It's nothing." "It's not nothing to me," her voice cracked. I don't need charity." His expression hardened. "You think this is charity? You saved my life. You didn't ask questions, didn't call the police, didn't demand payment. You helped because it was right." He stepped closer, and she smelled his cologne, subtle, expensive, masculine. "Let me do what's right for you. I don't even know you. Then know me." A pause. "Have dinner with me." "I can't. I have Amélie. Bring her. I'll send a car. Tonight, if you're free. If not, tomorrow. Next week. I'm patient, Renee." She should have said no, should have walked away, but his eyes held something that made her hesitate, loneliness maybe as deep as her own, a recognition that they were both survivors of different wars. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care?" His jaw tightened. "Because I've lived 48 years, and no one has looked at me the way you did that night. Like I was worth saving. Not my money. Not my power. Me." The raw honesty stole her breath. "Saturday," she heard herself say, "but somewhere Amélie friendly. And you tell me the truth. All of it." "All of it," he agreed. Saturday arrived with autumn cold and nervous energy. Renee dressed Amélie in her best dress, second-hand but pretty, and herself in jeans and a sweater that hugged her curves. Nothing fancy. She wasn't trying to impress him. The lie felt obvious even to herself. The car that arrived was obscenely expensive. The driver, a massive Korean man named Jae Hwan, treated them like royalty. Amélie pressed her nose against the window, chattering about everything they passed. "Are you Mama's boyfriend?" she asked Dongwon when they arrived at the restaurant, upscale but welcoming. With a kid's menu and no pretension, Renee's face heated. "Amélie." "Not yet," Dongwon said seriously, meeting the little girl's eyes with respect. "But I'd like to be your mama's friend. Is that okay with you?" Amélie studied him with the brutal honesty of children. "You're really tall, and you have sad eyes, but nice eyes. Mama likes nice eyes." "Amélie!" Renee wanted to disappear, but Dongwon smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features into something almost gentle. "Your mama has the nicest eyes I've ever seen." Dinner was easy, surprisingly easy. Dongwon asked Amélie about school, her favorite subjects, her art. He ordered Korean dishes and explained each one, teaching her to use chopsticks with patient humor. Renee watched him with her daughter and saw no impatience, no discomfort, just genuine interest. After Amélie fell asleep in the car on the ride home, Dongwon walked them upstairs. At her door, Renee finally asked the question burning in her chest. "What do you do, Dongwon, really?" His expression shuttered. "I run an organization, import-export mostly, some security services. That's not the whole truth. No." He held her gaze. "But it's all I can give you right now. What I can say is this. I'm not a good man, Renee. I've done things that would horrify you. But I'll never let any of that touch you or Amélie. You have my word." She should have been afraid, should have shut the door in his face. Instead, she nodded. "Okay. Okay. I see you, Dongwon. Not what you do. You, and what I see, is worth knowing." His hand lifted, fingers ghosting along her cheekbone, barely touching. "You're dangerous, Renee Holloway. So are you." "Yes," he agreed softly, "but never to you." The connection deepens, but secrets have a way of surfacing. Drop a comment. What do you think Renee will discover about Dongwon's true world? 3 weeks later, Renee's life had developed a rhythm she never expected. Dongwon appeared in small ways, a car to drive her home after late shifts, groceries delivered when her cupboards ran low, tickets to the Children's Museum for Amélie's birthday. Nothing extravagant enough to refuse, everything thoughtful enough to matter. They talked. Late-night phone calls when Amélie was asleep, his voice low and warm in her ear, telling her about his childhood in Busan, his immigration at 15, the loneliness of building an empire in a country that saw him as foreign. She told him about nursing school while pregnant, about raising Amélie alone, about the bone-deep exhaustion of loving someone more than your own life. "You're the strongest person I know," he said one night. "I'm terrified all the time," she admitted. "That's what makes you strong. Fear and courage aren't opposites, Renee. Courage is being afraid and doing it anyway. She fell a little harder with every conversation. But reality had a way of intruding on fairy tales. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday. Renee was shopping at the Korean market in Albany Park. Dong-won had taught her to make kimchi jjigae, Amelie's new favorite, when she overheard two women talking in hushed Korean. She'd picked up enough phrases to catch key words: Beck, dangerous, police investigation. Her blood turned cold. She went home and did what she should have done weeks ago. She Googled him. The results painted a picture that made her stomach drop. Suspected organized crime ties, multiple investigations, never enough evidence, associates who'd disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances. The Beck family name linked to everything from illegal gambling to suspected trafficking routes. Renee stared at her laptop screen, at Amelie sleeping peacefully in her bed, and felt the foundation of her new happiness crack. Her phone rang. Dong-won, like he always seemed to call when she needed him most. "Don't," she said when she answered. "Renee, what's wrong?" "I looked you up. I should have done it sooner, but I looked you up." Her voice shook. "Korean mafia, that's what they call you, that's what you are." Silence, heavy and damning. "Yes," he said finally. "You lied to me." "I never lied, I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing." Anger now hot and sharp. "I brought you into my home, around my daughter, and you're—" "I'm exactly what I told you I was," he interrupted, his voice harder now. "Not a good man, but a man who would die before letting harm come to you or Amelie. That wasn't a lie, Renee. That will never be a lie." "How can I trust that? How can I trust anything you say?" "You can't." Brutal honesty. "Trust isn't given, it's earned, so let me earn it. Let me show you who I am, all of it, the good and the terrible, and then decide." "Dong-won, I'm coming over. We're going to talk, really talk. And if you want me gone after, I'll go. But you deserve the whole truth." He arrived 30 minutes later, and Renee sent Amelie to Mrs. Kaminsky's, despite her daughter's protests. Some conversations weren't for young ears. Dong-won stood in her tiny living room looking too large, too dangerous, too everything. But when he met her eyes, she saw fear there, real, raw fear. "My father was a fisherman in Busan," he began. "Honest man, poor but proud. When I was 12, a gang demanded protection money. He refused. They burned our boat, our home, my mother." His voice caught. "She died in the fire. My father brought me to America to escape. Died of a heart attack 2 years later. I was 15, alone, angry." Renee's anger wavered, but she held firm. "That doesn't excuse—" "No," he agreed. "It doesn't. The Beck family took me in. Distant cousins running import business. I was smart, ruthless, willing to do what others wouldn't. I rose fast. By 25, I controlled the organization. By 30, I'd expanded it into something my predecessors never imagined." "Drugs?" Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "No, never. I won't touch that poison." His jaw tightened. "Gambling, protection services, some smuggling, cigarettes, luxury goods. Nothing that hurts people directly. I operate in the grey, Renee. Not white, never white, but not the black you're imagining either. People have died because of you. Yes, no hesitation. In this world, violence is currency. I've killed. I've ordered deaths. Men who would have killed me or mine first. It doesn't make it right. It makes it survival." Renee wrapped her arms around herself. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked for truth." He stepped closer, and she didn't back away. "Because I'm 48 years old, and I've never felt for anyone what I feel for you. Because I look at Amelie and see the daughter I never thought I'd have. Because this," he gestured between them, "is the first real thing in my life in decades, and I won't lose it to half-truths and shadows." "I have a daughter," Renee whispered. "I can't risk her safety." "You won't." His voice turned to steel. "I have enemies, men who'd use you to hurt me. So I've already assigned protection. Jae-hwan and Sung-min rotating shifts. They're outside right now. They'll follow you and Amelie everywhere, invisible unless needed. No one will touch you. Ever. You can't just decide." "I already did. The moment you knelt beside me in that rain, you became mine to protect. I don't need your permission for that, Renee. I need your trust, that I'll do it right. The possessiveness should have frightened her. Instead, it kindled something deep and primal, the knowledge that this dangerous man had chosen her, claimed her, would burn the world for her. "I need time," she said finally. "Take it. I'll wait. I'm good at waiting." He moved to the door, paused. "But know this. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you decide, I'm here. Always." After he left, Renee stood in her silent apartment and admitted a terrifying truth to herself. She was already his as much as he was hers. The only question was whether she was brave enough to claim it. This is where everything changes. If you're loving this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which moment got you the most. The decision came not in a dramatic moment, but in quiet inches. Dongwon kept his word. Protection invisible but present. Help offered but never forced. Patience as steady as stone. He called every night, never pushing, just there, a constant in her chaotic world. Amelie asked about him constantly. "When's Mr. Dongwon visiting? He promised to teach me Korean numbers. Mama, why do you look sad when you talk about him?" "Because I'm falling for a man who lives in shadows," Renee thought. "Because I'm terrified and exhilarated and so tired of being alone." The breaking point came on a Friday night. Renee was walking from the bus stop, late shift again, exhaustion a weight on her shoulders. She didn't notice the car following her until it pulled alongside, didn't register danger until the window rolled down. "You the nurse, bitch?" The voice was American, harsh, cruel. "Back's little pet?" Fear spiked through her. She walked faster. "He think he can move in on our territory. Send his gook-ass a message through you." Renee ran. The car accelerated. Doors opened. She heard footsteps, male laughter, the promise of violence in the air. Her heart hammered against her ribs, her breath coming in gasps, her mind screaming, "Amelie, Amelie, Amelie." A black SUV appeared from nowhere, cutting off the pursuers with precision that spoke of military training. Jae Hwan emerged like an avenging angel, 6'4" of controlled fury. The confrontation was brief, efficient, terrifying. Renee looked away when fists connected with flesh, when bodies hit pavement. Then strong hands on her shoulders, Seung Min's careful voice. "You're safe, Ms. Holloway, we've got you." They took her to Dongwon's penthouse. She was shaking too hard to protest. He met them at the door, his face a mask of glacial rage that transformed to desperate concern when he saw her. "Renee. Jesus, Renee." She walked into his arms without thinking, and he caught her, held her, one hand cradling her head against his chest, while the other pressed against her back like he could absorb her fear through sheer will. "I've got you," he murmured into her hair, switching to Korean without realizing, "Gwenchana, Gwenchana," then back to English. "You're safe, I promise, you're safe." The shaking gradually stopped. Renee pulled back enough to see his face, and there, visible above his collar as his shirt had come undone, was the full neck tattoo she'd only glimpsed before. A tiger, fierce and protective, crawling up from his chest to wrap around his throat. Black ink and power and barely restrained violence. Who were they? She asked. Rivals, the Volkov family, moving in from the west side, testing boundaries. His jaw was granite. They're handled. Handled how? You don't want to know. Yes, I do. She met his eyes, steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her. If I'm in this, I'm in it. No more half-truths. Something flickered in his expression. Respect, hunger, possession. They've been warned. Severely. It won't happen again. You can't promise that. Watch me. The words were a vow, absolute and unbreakable. From now on, you don't take the bus. Car service always. Extra security. And Renee? His hands framed her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones with devastating gentleness. You move in here. You and Amelie, where I can protect you properly. That's insane. That's non-negotiable. No room for argument in his voice. They came after you because of me. I won't risk you again. You're mine, Renee. Mine to protect, mine to keep safe, mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have triggered every feminist instinct she had. Instead, it unlocked something she'd been fighting for weeks. The need to be claimed, to be chosen, to matter to someone beyond obligation. I'm not a possession, she said. No, you're infinitely more precious than that. His forehead touched hers, breath mingling, hearts racing in sync. You're the first good thing in my life in 30 years. your hope, your light. You're everything I thought I'd die without ever finding. So yes, you're mine, and I'm yours. Completely, terrifyingly, forever, if you'll have me. Dongwon, I love you. The words fell between them like bombs, devastating and undeniable. I've loved you since you knelt beside a bleeding stranger and saw someone worth saving. I'll love you until my last breath and beyond. That's the truth you asked for. Renee's eyes burned. I have a daughter, complicated history, trust issues and trauma, and I know I see all of you, every beautiful, complicated, strong, terrified part, and I love it all. His thumb caught a tear sliding down her cheek. I'm not asking you to say it back. I'm just asking you to let me love you. Let me protect you. Let me give you and Amelie the life you deserve. She should have said no. Should have walked away. Should have chosen safety over this dangerous, impossible, perfect man. Instead, she kissed him. Their first kiss was everything. Desperate and tender. Claim and surrender. Question and answer. His hands were gentle despite the violence they'd committed. Reverent despite the power they held. He kissed her like she was precious, breakable, essential to his existence. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dongwon rested his forehead against hers. Get in, let me take you home, Renee whispered. Echoing the words she'd said that rainy night, his smile was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. I'm already home, Renee. With you, I'm already home. Moving in was both simpler and more complicated than Renee expected. Simpler because Dongwon handled everything. Movers, packing, transferring Amelie's school, even convincing Mrs. Kaminsky to visit weekly for tea and gossip. More complicated because Renee had to reconcile her new reality. She was living with a mafia boss, sleeping in his bed, building a life in his world. Amelie adapted with the resilience of children. The penthouse became her playground. Dongwon became Apawon, her own invention mixing Korean and English, and Jaehwan and Sungmin became her protective uncles who taught her taekwondo basics and Korean curse words she definitely wasn't supposed to know. Your daughter called someone a Shibal Seki today, Dongwon reported one evening, trying not to laugh. Jaehwan is mortified. Renee groaned. She's 7, she shouldn't know those words. She's your daughter, brilliant and fearless. He pulled Renee against his chest, arms wrapping around her waist as they stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Like her mother. 2 months passed in careful happiness. Dongwon taught Renee Korean cooking, and she taught him soul food that made him moan with pleasure. They navigated cultural differences, his formal Korean etiquette versus her casual American directness, his controlling protectiveness versus her fierce independence. They argued, made up, learned each other's rhythms. But shadows have a way of finding light. The threat came through an encrypted message to Dongwon's phone during Amelie's 8th birthday party. Renee watched his expression shudder, saw the transformation from the man who'd just helped her daughter blow out candles to the boss who'd built an empire on ruthlessness. What? She asked when they were alone. The Volkov family. They're not backing down. They've formed an alliance with the Calabrese Syndicate. His voice was ice. They're planning something big. How big? Big enough that I need to handle it personally. Fear coiled in her stomach. Dongwon, I'll be fine. I've been doing this for decades, Jagia. The Korean endearment sweetheart had become his name for her. But I need you and Amelie to stay here. Full security, no arguments. She wanted to argue anyway. Instead, she cupped his face, thumbs tracing the sharp lines of his jaw. You come back to us. That's not a request. Always. He kissed her deep and claiming, I'll always come back to you. He left that night in a black suit, white shirt unbuttoned just enough to show the edge of that tiger tattoo, armor and warning combined. Renee watched from the window as his car disappeared into Chicago's glittering darkness, and prayed to a God she'd stopped believing in years ago. 3 days of silence. 3 days of Renee jumping at every sound, of Amelie asking when Apawon would come home, of Sungmin's carefully neutral expression that told her nothing and everything. On the 4th day, the door opened. Dongwon walked in looking like he'd been through war, which Renee supposed he had. New bruises darkened his jaw, exhaustion carved lines around his eyes, but he was alive, whole, home. Apawon! Amelie launched herself at him, and he caught her despite obvious pain, holding her tight. Hey, little tiger, I missed you. Did you beat the bad guys? His eyes found René's over Amelie's head. Yeah, baby. I beat the bad guys. After Amelie went to bed, René found him in their bathroom, wincing as he tried to clean cuts on his back. She took the cloth from his hands without speaking, her touch gentle on wounds that would scar. The Volkov family won't be a problem anymore, he said quietly. Neither will their Calabrese friends. I don't need details. Good, because I can't give them. He turned to face her, hands settling on her hips. But I need you to know something. Today, when I was staring down gun barrels and worse, all I could think was, I have to survive this. I have to get back to René, to Amélie, to the family I never thought I'd have. His voice cracked slightly. You saved my life that night in the rain, but you keep saving it every single day just by existing, by loving me despite everything I am. René's eyes burned. You make it sound like a choice, like I could just stop. Couldn't you? No. Simple truth. I love you, Dongwon. I love your honor and your ruthlessness and your gentleness with Amélie. I love the way you make me feel safe and terrified and cherished. I love all of you, even the dark parts. Especially the dark parts, because they're what made you strong enough to protect us. His kiss was reverent, desperate, grateful. When he pulled back, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Marry me. What? Marry me. Not a question. Never a question with him. Make it official. Make us a family in every way. Let me put a ring on your finger and a claim on your name. Marry me, René. She should have asked for time, should have considered the implications, should have done anything except what she did. Yes, God, yes. The wedding was small. Mrs. Kaminsky, Dongwon's key lieutenants, a few of René's nurse friends who raised eyebrows at her mafia boss fiancé, but supported her anyway. Amélie was flower girl, throwing petals with chaotic enthusiasm. René wore a simple white dress. Dongwon wore a black suit with a white shirt, 4 buttons undone. His neck tattoo visible. A visual reminder of who he was, what he was, and that she'd chosen him anyway. When he slipped the ring on her finger, diamond and platinum, obscenely expensive, perfectly her, she felt the last piece of her guarded heart finally surrender. You belong with me, he whispered against her lips. I belong to you, she corrected, as much as you belong to me. Forever, he promised. Forever, she agreed. 1 year later, René stood in the kitchen of their penthouse, their home now, redecorated with family photos and Amélie's artwork, making kimchi jjigae while Dongwon attempted to perfect her grandmother's cornbread recipe. Too much sugar, Appa-one, Amélie criticized, perched on the counter like a tiny culinary supervisor. Your mama likes it sweet, Dongwon defended, but he adjusted the recipe anyway. René smiled, her hand unconsciously drifting to her slightly rounded belly. 3 months along, a surprise that had made Dongwon cry, actual tears from the most dangerous man in Chicago. They hadn't told Amélie yet, waiting for the right moment. The city sprawled below them, beautiful and brutal, full of shadows and light. René had left nursing to finish her degree, Dongwon insisted, and she'd learned to accept his help without shame. She volunteered at free clinics in her old neighborhood, giving back to the community that raised her. Dongwon had shifted some of his operations toward legitimate business, though he'd never be completely clean. She'd accepted that, accepted him. Mama, the timer. Amélie's voice pulled her back. Dinner was chaotic and perfect, mismatched recipes creating surprisingly good fusion, Amélie's laughter, Dongwon's hand finding René's under the table, squeezing gently. After, when Amélie was asleep and they stood at their window watching the city lights, Dongwon wrapped his arms around René from behind, hands settling protectively over their growing child. Thank you, he whispered into her hair. For what? For that rainy night, for every night since, for giving me a reason to come home. René turned in his arms, kissed him softly. Thank you for coming home. They stayed there, wrapped in each other, as Chicago glittered below, proof that even in the darkest rain, light could find its way. Thank you for going on this journey with me. If you love this story, there are more where this came from. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. What kind of story should I tell next? Let me know in the comments.